The Coven sacrificed a spiritual investigation into a dark empire. In the shadows of a bustling city, a secretive coven of witches and warlocks operated under the guise of a spiritual collective. They called themselves the Eternal Flame, a group of bisexual practitioners who claimed to harness the power of the divine for the greater good. But beneath their polished exterior lay a dark truth. They were sacrificing their own family members to sustain their power and wealth. The Coven was led by Ezekiel, a charismatic yet ruthless man who had built an empire on stolen energy. Ezekiel's right-hand woman, Mara, was equally cunning, using her beauty and charm to manipulate those around her. Together, they had created a network of deceit, binding their followers to them through fear and dark magic. But their empire was beginning to crumble. The story begins with Ilana, a woman who had once been entangled with the Coven. She had left years ago, seeking a life of peace and freedom. But the Coven had never truly let her go. They had tried to curse her, to drain her energy, and even to sacrifice her to their dark rituals. Yet, every attempt had failed. Elena's ancestors and spiritual guides had protected her, turning the Coven's magic against them. Now, the Coven was unraveling. Ezekiel and Mara had grown desperate. Their once thriving empire was collapsing, and they were losing control. Their followers, once loyal, were beginning to question their motives. The Coven's dark practices had started to backfire, and the consequences were devastating. One by one, members of the Coven began to fall ill. Some died mysteriously, their deaths hidden from the outside world. Others were driven to madness, consumed by guilt and fear. The Coven's attempts to sacrifice their own family members to prolong their lives only made things worse. The spirits they had invoked were now turning on them, demanding justice for the lives they had destroyed. Elena, now a spiritual investigator, decided it was time to expose the Coven. She had always known the truth about their dark practices, but she had stayed silent, hoping they would eventually destroy themselves. Now, with the Coven's empire crumbling, she knew she had to act. Elena began her investigation by reaching out to former members of the Coven. Many were too afraid to speak, but a few brave souls agreed to share their stories. They spoke of rituals gone wrong, of sacrifices that had backfired, and of the Coven's obsession with Elena's energy. One former member, Lila, revealed that the Coven had tried to curse Elena multiple times, but each attempt had failed. They thought they could steal her light, Lila said, but all they got was her shadows, and those shadows are destroying them. As Elena dug deeper, she uncovered the Coven's darkest secret. They had been sacrificing their own family members to sustain their power. Ezekiel had even sacrificed his own brother, hoping to extend his life, but the spirits had not been pleased. Instead of granting him immortality, they had cursed him, causing his health to deteriorate rapidly. Mara, too, was suffering. She had tried to sacrifice her niece, hoping to gain favor with the spirits. But the ritual had backfired, and Mara was now haunted by visions of her niece's ghost. The Coven's downfall was swift and brutal. Their followers began to abandon them, and their once powerful empire crumbled into dust. Ezekiel and Mara, now isolated and desperate, tried to perform one final ritual to save themselves, but the spirits would not be appeased. In the end, the Coven was destroyed by the very forces they had sought to control. Ezekiel and Mara were left broken and alone, their empire reduced to ashes. Elena, meanwhile, emerged stronger than ever. She had faced the darkness and survived, and now she was ready to help others do the same. She continued her work as a spiritual investigator, exposing dark practices and helping those who had been harmed by them. The story of the Eternal Flame served as a stark reminder of the dangers of greed and the destructive power of dark magic. The Coven had sought to control the forces of the universe, but in the end, they were consumed by them.